Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Coffee Talk from Planet Fair. My name is Henrike, and I'm talking with
Margret.
With a beautiful cup of coffee today.
Yeah, it's a good cup of coffee, actually. Yeah,
it's good. It's good. I like it. And today we want to talk about a special topic, a topic that everybody's been talking about all the time, but we're going to do it a bit differently. So get prepared. Margaret, I want to talk with you about the EU Pay Transparency Directive. Wah!
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, I just came from World at Work where we were having that conversation. That's what I spoke about there. And if just to kick us off, if I summarize what we're seeing, we have seen drafts from Sweden and the Netherlands, Ireland, Poland, or a small part of the labor market in Belgium. So what are the kind of overall trends? Like if I just sum it up quickly. In one thing, countries appear to systematically go beyond the directive in requiring pay information in job listings. So according to the directive, you just have to give the pay information to your candidate before the interview. But for example, Ireland, Poland, they go beyond that and just require it to be in the job listings. So that seems to be kind of one popular choice of going a little bit further. In other ways, in many cases, these national regulations seem to align closely with the directive. Another interesting thing is that they don't resolve all the regulatory uncertainties, so they are sometimes equally vague in their wording as we compare to the directive. And maybe the third point that I would draw I think is interesting is that the national regulations really reflect what is currently happening in each country. So if you look at the Swedish draft, it builds on the long-standing Swedish legislation that mandates job evaluation, right? And then the national or the draft, which is almost 900 pages, by the way, builds on that and just adds to it. And kind of similar thing, I know you are very familiar with Germany, and the conversation was that in the German when the Germans would transpose the law into the directive into law, there will be a lot of emphasis on the right to information, but it happens to be that right has been in the German law for a very long time, right? So it seems that each country is going to build on their own pay equity traditions in a way, but it also seems like there are no news from the majority of states. This is concerning for those who are waiting for the member state legislation, right?
Yeah, I think that, as you said, there are many there where we have no news. Plus, there are quite a few countries that have had elections in between, and where you can say that the goal was to finish on time, but with re-elections and new parties finding themselves into coalitions, they seem to have other priorities. I don't understand why, but they don't put like the pay transparency on top.
Yeah, I also think it's more than just different priorities. I think the political climate has shifted in Europe also drastically, right? So this has definitely fallen down on government's agendas. That's my sense. Yeah, you need someone passionate to push this through, and I don't think that's happening in every member state. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, having now sort of the update on what's happening actually with the EU directive, my thought would be, or my question would be, why do companies or anybody who employs and pays other people actually needs to wait for this directive? Because I see that we have companies that sort of take it a bit of an excuse. Oh, we wait until we know approximately what we have to do, but we wait until we know exactly what's going to be inside the national legislation. So then again, we don't do nothing until that's happened, and that might happen. We never know when we can see this. There's too many still waiting. So we have again something sort of good coming on the legislation side via the EU, but then again, we have the companies waiting for it. What's your opinion if you think about this big excuse thing? Why do we need to wait for legislation? Can't we somehow get the companies to finally understand that they could be paying fairly just because they want to and because they have to, because it sort of should be their culture, because people want it, because employees will otherwise go and work somewhere else? What's your opinion on this? So much talk about the directive, but still, why do we actually need it? Let's put it that blunt way.
Yeah, no, I think this is a super interesting question. So when you think about the directive, it's really a collection of pay transparency tools. Like the emphasis isn't on pay equity that much, right? It's only small thing, Article 10. We can have a separate conversation about why that doesn't go far enough. And it really, when we look at these tools, honestly, they are best practices. So when I pulled the audience in my talk at World at Work, and over 75% of the people there were already implementing these tools. I mean, what are these tools? They are simple things like not asking for past salaries, right, in an interview process. They are posting salary information in job listings, right? Is having an objective and gender neutral pay structure and being able to communicate that pay structure to your employees. That seems like a best practice that should just be implemented, by standard. And I think most organizations have. They might have to revisit some things, but if they have their house in order, they have their their pay structure based on objective criteria. It seems like a no-brainer, right? So where does the directive then start to add something? So what is, I think, will be the biggest hurdle and require a cultural change for many employers. And maybe, then, because your question was, why don't they just implement it? There might be some fear around it, is that according to the directive, an employee has the right to get information about the average salary broken down by gender in their category of worker, right? And that feelings and companies have to remind their employees of this right every year. So that might be, I mean, companies might be holding off on that part because that requires, for example, just a strategic communication plan. Like, how are you going to talk about pay? You have to train your managers to talk about pay. So I think that part of the directive, will put some work. I mean, that will be a little bit of work for employers, but the rest is really standard if you think about it. So yeah, so why don't companies just do it? I mean, it might be similar. It might not be a top of the agenda to put together a communication plan around average paying category of worker. But but I think that's a lot of it. And then the rest, Article 9 and 10, which are the pay gap reporting, it's really just gathering data and calculating your unadjusted gaps. What is different in the directive is the total package. So there's a lot of emphasis on, not just looking at base pay or estimated short-term incentive. It needs to be actual cash in the pocket, right? So plus the benefits, and it needs to be actual number, and it needs to include everything. So that is also a hurdle because that information many companies just don't have it kind of in their systems. So that will be a little bit of work. So again, to kind of answer your question, that will be another kind of a big undertaking to get to that total number for companies. But there's nothing, thinking forward, there's nothing holding companies back of taking the steps, right? And we should just get there. But in terms of pay equity, if we are aiming for closing those adjusted pay gaps, the ban on salary history is going to make a small dent, and information job listings maybe move the needle a tiny bit. But I think it's the internal information that might move something. So, and that's not the part that employers are going to jump on and say, this is what I'm going to do today. But maybe I'm just being pessimistic. I don't know.
Yeah, I understand that, because I mean, I'm very optimistic in general, but on this topic, after so many years, it's like thinking like, I see this good bubble, the bubble around me, companies getting certified, companies doing pay equity analysis, doing the right thing, having great numbers. Living in this bubble feels like the world is okay, but it's such a small bubble when I think about the companies that are out there. And I'm like thinking, what do all the others do? So let's get the call out there. Don't wait for the EU directive to happen. It's there. It's going to come. Don't worry about it. It will be there. You can just start today, pay fairly, be happy, and stay optimistic. That would be my idea. And our time is way over today, but I think it's important, so it doesn't matter. I think that's a good one. So, but we will stop here and get more content into our other coffee talks. So thank you everybody for being with us, and have a great day. Goodbye, Margret.
Bye, Henrike.